Hello guys, my name is Adrian and welcome to my channel. If you are new to the channel, I'm trying here to create a game engine in order to be used for some future games. I'm using C++ and OpenGL, and in the previous video we talked a little about the project structure. Today we will try to have a window on the screen because we are not using any existing game engine from the market like Unity or Unreal. We need to do everything by ourselves. Of course, in order to create the window, you can use libraries like glfw, SDL2, or any other options. But for us, we'll do everything ourselves. What that means? It means that for each individual platforms, like Windows, Linux, macOS, and maybe others, we need to write some specific code that is specific just for that platform. We know that C++ is cross-platform and that it can be used for multiple platforms. But some code, it's just specific to Windows, for example, because just Windows knows how to create their own windows. Things like this were not, let's say, implemented in C++ to be generic. But how do we do that for Windows first? We will use something called Win32 API. Okay, it's a simple set of functions that help us to create a window. Later on, we can add window events, things like when the window is closed, things like input when some button or some key is pressed on the keyboard, and when the window is moved, and so on. So we will start today just with the window. Okay, we will try to define, and like I explained in the previous video, we will work a lot with modules. Okay, our game framework, game engine, how you want to call it, it's your choice, no problem. It will be kind of structure with modules in mind. In some other engines, you have this as packages, but for us, it's just called modules. So the work that we are doing, it is mostly in the platforms modules one. The main project platforms framework, it's already available on GitHub. You have the code in the description of the video, and so on. So, without any other things to be said, we will start and we will work in the platform. The structure in a module, it will be kind of very similar with what we have in the main project. We'll add a folder that will be called core, okay, similar with what we have in the game, and something that will be, for example, in our case, Windows. The core folder will contain things that are common across this module. For now, I don't intend to kind of have like some modules to be included in another one. I want modules to be independently. So if you want to use my solution for the platforms in order to have window events, input, and all that, you can use it. If you want to use glfw for such a thing and just use the graphics for OpenGL, it's also acceptable. So the whole idea of this game framework, it will not be to kind of create some very fixed way on how to do the game engine part. My idea is to create modules, and it will remain for each project individually to assemble those modules how you will need. Good. So we have the core and the windows. In the windows, I'll create already a class which will be called window. We need to change the namespace, of course, to be Windows. I like to use namespaces. They are quite good in order to organize the project better. In here, in the core, I will use and I'll create a new subfolder, base. and in it I'll create a header called window. Now, what it remains for us? In here, into the main CMake file from the platform, we'll add something called project. We'll call it platforms module. We'll use languages C++, of course. Add library, the same name we will use, platforms module. We will add the subdirectory Windows, okay, and the subdirectory core. That's what we have so far now. Now, into the core CMake file. Now here we need to do something like target, include directories. This is not C++ code. It's something that it is specific for CMake tool. I explained in the previous video what CMake is, but I will just make a short recap here. So CMake will help us to kind of take the C++ code, and based on the operating system that you are on, it will kind of output for you some project specific tool. For example, I'm using CMake on Windows. My C++ code, it will be put into some project that is specific for Visual Studio. If I would use another, let's say, type of project on Windows, it will help me to generate that type of project. I'm using CLion to write the code. You can use Visual Studio, you can use Visual Studio Code if you want, or any other tool. CLion is just my preference. So, in order to make your project, to take it up and running and later on to be focused more on the code, you need kind of to do this preparation structure, or how you want to call it. So, target included project, I want to use public, and I'll put 2 points, which means that every time I want to include a folder from platforms module, for example, I need to specify something like include core/base or Windows and all that stuff. Now, for the Windows. In the Windows, how we will start? Target, sources, project name, private, and you guessed it, we will use the Windows CPP. Now, let's do the next thing. The next thing that we need to do, it's inside our main game project. We need to use something like target, link libraries, project name private, and we'll use platforms module. That simple with codes. Now, what it will do behind the scenes, it will try to start including this code. Now, if we are kind of running the project, nothing is still happening. Okay, so let's continue. Okay, so in here, what I want to do, I want to include core base window. Okay, I want to include the code from here. In here, I will, just a second, I will use some namespace core base. Okay, and I will have a class window like, and of course, nothing more. In here, in the base class, I want to put public, and I'll create some virtual auto. I like to use the auto feature from C++. We'll use the void, it will be a pure function. We'll use virtual auto destroy. Okay, and what we can do further, virtual auto show. Okay, for the show, the same, it will be pure virtual. I think for the show we can make it, if we want, also a constant function. Okay, because in the show we don't need to change any members. So also every time it is very okay to have a default destruction. So what we have here, we have a base class, a window class, which has create, destroy, and show. Okay, we don't want to have anything else for now. Now, what remains for us to do? First, if we are trying to compile, we'll see that we have some errors. Okay, and we don't like errors, right? So, we don't have errors because we need here include, and let's have windows, window, and let's have something like auto, window, equal to new windows, window. Whoop, I don't know what combination of keyboard I pressed there, but sorry. So in here we'll have like window, and we should have create, window show, and at the end window destroy. And what I will not do it now, but let's try to build now the code. It will say that the create is not a member of the windows, and true, it's not. But why? Now I will use something called inheritance. I hope you know what inheritance is, but if you don't know, just in a sentence, it means that whatever I put into my base window class, like here, okay, these three functions, I need to have them also here. So I kind of inherit the traits of the base class, something like this. So let's align the code a little. I like to align things. Okay, destroy, show, generate. Let's try to run now, and mostly we will not see anything on the screen. What it remains for us to do? In the Windows class, we will have a private variable, but also I would like to have a header here called headers, for example. And what I will have here, I will include windows.hash. In order to have these headers taken into consideration, I will use something called precompiled header. It's something that exists in Visual Studio also. Target precompiled headers, project, private headers. Okay. So now it will, if I'll try to build, it will take in consideration the Windows hash header. This is something specific for the Windows. This is where the information on how to create a window and all that stuff, it is on Windows platform. Okay, good. Now, what remains for us to do? In here, I want to use something like hash WND, which means handle window. Okay, I will call it hash WND, handle for the window. This is the name. And what I need to do first, as some, let's say, member of this class, I want to use something like style, something called style. Just a second. In the headers, I want to include another one, std int, std int, okay. This is because I like to use this, instead of using unsigned int, I like to use uint32 type. You can use unsigned int, okay, but I like this shortcut, stuff like I'm using just because the name is much easier to put. So in the style, we'll use something like from the Windows. We'll use some flags that are already existing in the Windows.hash header. It will start with Windows and S. Okay, I think it started from Windows style, and we will use something like clip siblings, and we will make an OR here with the clip children. We'll have another one which will be called extra in our case. And we will have this flag that was already added by the AI assistant that I'm using, and it needs to be WS X app window. And now we can go and have our first window. Okay, so what do we need here? First, what do we need is something like something that starts with W and D from window, class EX, okay, and we'll call it class EX. And in here, this is a structure that kind of, let's say the windows, it's using it in order to define our window. First, you need to do something about the CB size member. And for it, you need to specify the class, the size of this structure. I don't know why it's working this way. It should not work this way, but this is how they define. Next, we need to have a style. This is not the same style that we used before. This is some other type of style. So it starts with the class style. You see CS, class style. And we have this flag, this flag, and another one, which is CS own DC. Okay. Another thing that we need to use, we have this LPFN window proc function. This is a function. Let's see if I can have something like default win proc. It needs to be something like, just a second, default window proc. Okay, we can use something that is the default one. Later on, we will kind of implement our own. But for now, we want to just move forward. Hash instance. For it, this is the let's say some instance of the program, but these are kind of things that are very specific to Windows. Later on, maybe we can go more into it. Okay, we have the module handler. We use null pointer. This will return something like an instance for the current window. We need to specify an icon. For this, we'll have load icon. We use a null pointer, and we use this ID application. This will do for our window some default icon. The same applies with the cursor. We use the arrow one, and what we need to do in the end, you need to specify some class name. So in our case, let's call it window for now. Now, what it remains for us? We need to call something like register class. Okay, that simple. But this returns some result. So in order to kind of have that result, we can have something like here, an atom. This is just a handler to some word, which is just something like an unsigned short, but Windows, you know. Okay, let's call it ID. Also, let's initialize this with something like default stuff. So in the window here, we'll have the ID equal with the registered class that we just created. And now what we'll do is like the handle for the window, we'll use create window extension. We'll use the extra flag that we created. We'll use the something make int atom from the ID. Okay, we'll use the title. Let's call it platforms framework. Okay, we need to have the style. let's have, because we don't need to, we need to specify an X and a Y. We don't care that much. So I think we have something like use default something. I don't remember very well. I think they were like something like this. Use default. Okay. Use default. We need to specify some size. So let's use some small window. Next, we need to specify a parent for the window. We don't have a parent. We need to specify if we are using some menu we are not using. We need to specify again the instance module. We don't care about that. And at the end, we need to specify some parameter. If we want, for example, for the window that we just created, if we want to send, for example, just pointer to this current window, we kind of can by doing that. Okay, what we want to do further in the show, here we will use some function, show window. We'll use the handle for the window and the flag show. And for the destroy, it's kind of very simple, destroy window with a handle. This can be made constant. And now, if we are running the program, we have first an error that says something like, just a second, they don't like what we did. Let's rerun the CMake. Let's try to do this also. Okay, the problem is right now we used, I know where is the problem. So, because we are using something that is very window specific, we can have something like, we need to have something like target, link libraries, project name, and we need to have something like GDI32, OpenGL32. I'm putting here like all the libraries that we will use for this series. So let's try, we need to link. So some parts are kind of part of this library, so they are not working because we are not linking them. Okay, and just a second, I want to check something. Okay, that it's done, but the problem is still happening. Okay, what do we need to do here? We need to include also Windows hash, or we can, if we want, nope, was not that. So where is the problem? Let's try to put this as public. That was. Later on, we will solve it. So, for a second, you saw some window on the screen. But how do we make that window to stay there? While true, don't try this at home. Okay. Later on, we will handle the Windows function. So, why we didn't kind of had access and we had those errors? It was because we kind of put the access to our code for the Windows code that we just wrote. It was in a private state in the sim. Later on, we can still use it as private, but we will use some factory design pattern in order to be able to have a base class, and depend on the platform that you are on, you will use the correct folder. For now, we made that public and the code was working. So I think this is it for today. We have our window. Now our project, because we are using a while true, is not responding this is not how you should handle the window, but there was no other possibility in order to make this window to stay on the screen. So this is what we have for today. Thanks for watching. More videos will come soon enough. And in the next video, we will handle the Windows event, and we will not have this window in a while through loop stuck. We will use some flags in order to signal the window if it was closed or not. Thanks for watching. Have a nice day and see you in the next video. Bye bye.